This week, I'm sharing when I had one of those "Am I the asshole" moments and how I turned to AI to help me process my guilt. I can't wait to share, so let's get started.
Welcome to the I'm Perfectly Divine podcast, a place for the strong, sensitive, spiritual seeker to recognize the perfection of your human journey, emotional and spiritual worlds through proven and grounded frameworks that support you to live in the wholeness you already are. For over the past 2 decades, I have supported people from all around the world, as well as Fortune 500 companies, to dissolve the divisions within them and live with greater empowerment and love. This podcast is an exploration of the paradoxes that befuddle us as we live our lives being both human and divine. Together, you and I, along with other experts, will navigate integrating psychology and spirituality, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, the darkness and the light, to create greater sacred union from within. I believe through your remembering that you are innately divine, that you will allow yourself to more openly shine. So let's get to it, because your unique light is needed more than ever.
Welcome to I'm Perfectly Divine podcast. It has been quite a week. I've had a crazy week. It started off with getting sick, and during that, we lost hot water. And I've got a sty. So this is one of those things where you've got to be careful what you wish for. There's been so many times where I'm like, oh, I wish I was a guy and I could just hop on and do a video, record a podcast when I feel inspired instead of putting on my makeup and blah, blah, blah. And so here I am, no makeup because of this sty. So it has been a week, but all good. And today I want to share with you this moment that I had where I had one of those "Am I the asshole" moments. And I've seen those posts before. I haven't really dug into them, but I've seen them before. And I always thought it was interesting that we turn to one another, because I think sometimes we're looking for clarity, sometimes we're looking for absolution. And so I did something a little crazy for me, I guess, which was I turned to AI to see where I could process my guilt using this as a resource, using AI as a resource. And to give some context to that, I was just watching and listening to Mel Robbins' podcast, who has this person on there speaking about AI and all the ways we could use AI. And I'm like, well, this is cool. I'm curious. Where would this guide me? And as a psychotherapist, holding the psychological piece and the priestess, where I want us to be able to know ourselves from our heart and remember the love that we are. Where can AI support us? And where does, in my opinion, it falls short? And so I'm going to be sharing my experiences with you, per usual, to support you to see uh, first of all, I hope you know that this is a constant practice, that as long as we are alive, that we want to be practicing bringing love in our day-to-day experiences. And this is where I think the patriarchy has missed the mark when it comes to aligning with our divine selves, that there's always this ascension that we need to be attaining versus remembering the love that we are in the complexity of our humanity. Because this, first of all, our spirits want to experience love this way. This is how we embody love, when we can bring it into our humanity. It's great that you can feel it while you're in meditation, and that is a tool that you should use. As long as we're alive, though, our human selves want to continue to expand and be the vessel of this love, and to allow us to bring more compassion, especially into those areas when we feel stuck, when we feel challenged. So what I did was I just went to ChatGPT and said, help me understand my guilt from an empowered perspective. And then I gave it the story. So here's the brief story. You all know, or maybe you don't, but I have three children, and one of them will be traveling abroad next year to Sydney, Australia. And so I'm in the States, this is far away. And there is a few of other friends that are going along with one another. And one of my kids' friends has brought me to a place of some concern. So what happened is that my son's friend um, got beat up last weekend. They're in college. My son was not there. My son was home. Um, he just happened to be home. But basically, this friend was defending another person that he was with. He was trying to de escalate a situation, um, and got sucker punched. And um, he was on the ground. Police came. And the next day, he had to go to the hospital because his teeth were messed up. He's fine. But and I felt bad. I felt bad that he went through this experience. The issue I have is this person, this friend in particular, this is not his first rodeo with trouble finding him. And he is just to give you some perspective, he's literally been kidnapped after a night of drinking in Mexico. Um, Again, my son was not there, thankfully, but like to say that trouble follows this person is like it is a proven reality. And so I have a group chat with the other moms that we have our kids going to Sydney, Australia. And I hear about this. I'm the only mom that knows about this. And we've kind of had this, pact of like, how are we going to support one another and make sure our kids are safe and just be honest with one another, what we see going on for our kids and so forth. And so I tell my son, I'm like, look, I'm telling these other moms what has gone on, because the first reaction was compassion. Here's this kid, he got his, teeth messed up. But personally, beyond these other two stories, there's other stories that I won't get into, but just lead me to believe there's a pattern here where there's a lack of accountability, especially around drinking and all the things that go along with that. And so I shared with my son that I was going to tell these other moms, and he was like, okay, they're going to find out anyways. But then I felt guilty afterwards. I felt guilty, like, am I being the asshole that I'm actually angry at this kid because I don't feel like he's taking responsibility? So this is what I literally did the microphone and put it in a chat GBT like that. And I was actually pretty impressed with what the response was. So it was really interesting. I want to share some of it because I think it is very helpful, and I like that some of the responses. And so the first thing that the AI output was like, the AI says your reaction actually makes sense. So there was this validation that came in. Um, and it provided what I talk about is the both and approach. And it says you don't want anyone to get hurt, and you're frustrated because this pattern keeps repeating. And and you want to protect your son from being pulled into unsafe situations. So super validating. And then it says, because I asked specifically, and I recommend you do this if you need that immediate guidance right away, that the guilt is not telling you that you're wrong. Guilt is signaling that you value being kind and fair. It means your heart cares about how you show up, and that's good. So all good things that it's leading me to take in. And so it asks a question, a prompt for me to reflect on. If I acknowledge my frustration, does that make me a bad or unkind person? And it says the empowered meaning here is that you feel guilty because you care about being compassionate and you're protecting your son's safety. So your protective instinct does not cancel your compassion. And then it gave me some reframes. All of this is really good. Okay. And so then it's like, it's asking me, I can help you craft a compassionate internal dialogue for yourself. I'm like, cool, let's do it. And so it gives me this, you know, these phrases to talk myself through, to remember that protecting my child is not unkind. I'm allowed to honor my instincts. I, and so forth. And so it was really trying to help that self-soothing piece. And this is what I can say AI was very helpful for, is that if you feel like you're about to go on a downward spiral and you can't get yourself to be able to self-soothe in the moment, I think this can be very powerful. I think you can really be guided to support yourself to really understand this from a perspective that can be like talking to a friend or talking to a therapist, where you need that, or where it's helpful to have that sense of validation. And then it offered to help bring this into my body and what my body needs, and asked me to locate the where the guilt is in my body. And for me, it was in the throat. And so then it led me through a series of questions, you know, what am I afraid of if I speak my truth? And it was helpful, but where this led me, so how I responded to that is that I would be disliked. And AI said, this is a younger part of you. Now, this is may be true, but when I was going through it, I was like, okay, that was exactly my sense. This maybe, but it didn't feel spot on. So I allowed chat to go through the process, you know, of um, the inner child that might be afraid to speak honestly, that's still afraid of being rejected within me. Um, and here's the thing. Again, I'm not saying that there's not aspects to this that could still be there, but that's not what came through as I went deeper. And this is where I think a lot of us get stuck, is that when we're doing inner child work, we're trying to connect the dots between where we are now and something from our past. And when you have done a lot of that, that's not necessarily what's going on. And that can be oftentimes be where we're left going. A long time ago, when I was in therapy, I remember going to my therapist, and then I'm like, I hit a wall, because I'm like, there's a point where I just can't blame my childhood anymore. And this isn't working for me. And then I went to some more somatic therapists, and it was kind of the same thing. It's like they kept wanting to go back into the past in a way where I'm like, I get it, but and sure, maybe, but it doesn't feel spot on. So I need to bring this forward for you, because I know a lot of people get stuck here, and it's like, this is where therapy can get a bad name, because it's like, it's not that you're saying there's nothing left of your past to explore, but it's kind of like, okay, when I'm actually tired of blaming something from my past, like, I think I have moved on. I think there's real forgiveness there, right? And so we in our hearts are the only ones that can know if that's real for us. And you have to get very clear with yourself. And the second part that I took myself on is part of this, where your heart knows the difference that your mind does not. So for me, this was like, okay, I don't know if this is really resonating. And so then it's like, okay, let's do an embodiment practice. And it took me into my throat, and had me repeat some phrases to help my throat chakra. And it was saying, does your throat feel tight? And I was like, yeah, it feels tight. It gave some examples of what was going on. And the beautiful part about the embodiment piece, and I actually liked it, it was like, be in the tightness, allow it to be here, don't try to fix it. Um, this is a way to help your throat know you're not in danger. And then it provided some phrases, to help me be with, and then allowed movement in my throat. What does your throat want to do? Does it want to swallow? Does it want to yawn or hum? And so I did that, and it and it gave me the phrase, my voice is safe within me now. My voice is safe within me now. My voice is safe. I can speak from love. I can protect from love. I can remember who I am. Okay, beautiful. How does it feel? It felt tighter. So that was the surprising thing. But this doesn't mean that AI led me anywhere incorrect. It meant that there was more for me to process, because my throat felt tighter. And so this was about as far as AI could take me. And that's when I turned to my own process of using emotions as a gateway into remembering who we truly are, remembering our sacred self. And so I was like, okay, beautiful, where AI was led me. Now I'm going to utilize my negative feelings to guide me back to my sacred self. And I literally took the workbook that I give you for free if you take my emotional alchemy of the heart class. Emotional alchemy of the heart is me explaining again how I process triggers in real time and show you the limitations of where our mind can take us and where we are being guided to go more on a feminine heroine's journey. And ultimately, I believe that beyond the heroine's journey, we are led to resurrect in divine union with our healthy feminine and healthy masculine. Okay. Um, Emotional alchemy of the heart, I'm giving you the steps on how to really work with your emotions and get to a deeper sense of self-gnosis. So I took the same trigger, this guilt, and I was working the workbook. And when it got to the part where it goes, what is your heart's knowing? So what was left for me, I'll just say what happened. When I went through the workbook instead and I followed the prompts for the sacred self and how guilt is guiding us, it was a little different than what came through with AI. Not more than a little different. It was different. Okay. And so it led me to hold. And this is what we're meant to do. We're meant to hold with love and compassion our humanity. My humanity was saying, I've done something wrong. And now my throat feels more contracted. And what was interesting, when I tuned into my spirit, I felt ashamed. So what this is telling me is my emotional body, my energy was experiencing guilt, but my spirit was feeling ashamed, ashamed that I should know better, ashamed that I could have handled things better. And so in this process, I guide you back to your heart's knowing. And this is where my heart's knowing led me. And I'll just read it to you because I typed it out as it was coming through. This is where we learn to channel what is in our hearts. And the practice is being in that alignment with our divinity while being anchored into our humanity without with holding all of who we are. I'll put it that way. So, and this is a practice, and this is why I want to keep sharing this with you, because when you get this, it can really change how you are understanding yourselves and how to feel aligned in your humanity with your divine self. What my heart's knowing said to me in that moment is that this is the part of you that is afraid of being seen in the fullness of who you are, which is strong, combative, and won't take people's shit. But this is the fighter that is required in you to serve your life's purpose. Don't be ashamed of me as not love. Love has the wisdom to know when to stand up and when to bring compassion. It is the patriarchy that wants you to believe love is only soft and compassionate. So this was very powerful for me, because here I go back to where AI was leading me about this inner child and being disliked, and I'm like, and being rejected. And I was like, okay, maybe, but it just, that right there is gnosis. That was my inner wisdom's gnosis saying, I don't want to discredit this because I know in the past this has been an issue for me. And I don't want to say I'm a quote unquote above anything or over anything. So I'm going to have humility. But my body was like, that's not quite it. That doesn't resonate. And this did. This was like, oh, we still think of the divine feminine as like Mother Mary, the unconditional love, and that's full of compassion. But unconditional love is holding us in our strength. And this whole notion that women can't lay down the law, can't have boundaries, can't say, I'm done with this. And I'm not taking this BS and I'm not buying the storyline and all of that. And then that's not love. This is exactly what we're missing with the other side of the healthy divine feminine. So often, even in spiritual paths, we can revert to the healthy masculine when we think of strength and courage, when very much in the pathway of the divine feminine, there is a recognition of the healthy solar and the healthy lunar feminine, the dark goddesses and the goddesses of light. And so much of what we've been taught to be afraid are these dark goddesses, because they are telling us enough with your BS. It's time to be honest with yourself. And they're going to cut through the BS. They're not going to allow you to continue down a path that is ultimately in your long term not good for you. And this is why we are afraid of goddesses like Kali Ma, because this is the tower card in the tarot. This is death. This is we're done. But the only reason why this destruction is happening is because this destruction is not you. This destruction is a false narrative and story that is ultimately not serving you. And so much of my growth during that time where I was really struggling was learning to receive this aspect of the darkness, of the descent, and of what we fear about the dark goddess and strong women. And so here it's coming forward for me to say, you need to really own this and understand that, yes, you can still be a compassionate mother and own the strength of calling out an unhealthy pattern that for whatever, for where you stand, you've been able to witness patterns that need to be called forward. And so then the, the practice where the emotional embodiment guidebook takes you through is then how do you embody this? And what came forward through me was a song that helped me anchor into the divine feminine strength. And then honestly, sharing all this with you, the more I share my process with you, um, I I do it for both you and me. I want to normalize for you that being on this path, there's no end game, there's no ascent that you get to the top of the mountain. We continue to spiral and spiral in love, in remembrance of who we are, so that we can deepen the love that we are. And for me, I am living this practice that I am countering my own ego sense, my own spiritual ego that says you should be over this by now, and saying, no, that's not the way. That is not the way. And that's where our ego limits us. It wants to put us on a spiritual pedestal. And then we lose connection with the truth of who we are and remembering the love that we are in each moment. And that's how a love that is beyond us is able to be embodied within us and starts to take over within us, because we are allowing it in the places that, for me, especially the spiritual ego would stop or the mind would stop. So here's my takeaways. AI, I think, is great for short-term soothing. I think it's great if you can't um, afford therapy, if you need to gain a different perspective to just calm down. It will help validate your experience. And it's trying to fix you. So I think that's the piece. AI is going to be uncomfortable with you staying in your discomfort. And where the process to your sacred self is really about being able to hold the discomfort and learn from it. And again, the dark goddess will hold you there despite the you feeling the heat from the fire, to awaken you for your long-term well-being and inner peace and inner knowing. So I will share that for me, it did feel a bit weird, even as someone who feels very comfortable with going inward. I think when I'm inward on my own, I've got my candle and my journal and it's quiet. And this was a weird for me to do it with a computer. Maybe that's just a generational thing for me. I don't know. But, so I guess for me, I just had to keep bringing myself back into the inner state where I could gain insight even while being on a computer. As I said, the inner child piece was not the bullseye. I guess the harm with that is, harm might be a little too strong, but it just keeps you going, like retracing something where you've already been. So it's okay. I mean, again, your gnosis is going to bring you back to, yeah, that's not completely it for me. The embodiment practice AI gave me made it worse, but that is not bad. That's it. So it tightened my throat more, because there was, for me, that's an indicator that there's more that wants to be processed in the moment. And I'm so grateful I have a process that I can turn to that will help me process this in the moment. And again, this is where I invite you to take my emotional alchemy of the heart class, so that you have a process in the moment that will support you to go deeper into the wisdom of your sacred self. So when doing your sacred self work, you aren't looking for short-term relief. That's not the objective. The objective is you generally feel pretty good in the, in your life, and in the short term, most of the time you can get yourself back into feeling steady, right? You're at this point of the game, You are purposely bringing yourself back to triggers because you want the transformative insight. That's the huge difference. And that's why I always say I'm speaking to people who have gone through the hero's journey. You've had the dark night of the soul. You've done shadow work, inner child work, and now you're, hitting a wall. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's just there is different tools and different way to access that is going to go against what we've been taught to access this deeper wisdom of our hearts. So AI is going to go back to more of a traditional therapy standpoint, where I would say it's not mixing the psychological with the spiritual. That's why it goes back to inner child work. Again, inner child work is very powerful. At some point, you must do it if you've never done it. And if you've done it, this is where you hold with both humility and curiosity what your heart's inner knowing is guiding you to do without bypassing it. So I loved this experiment with AI. I'm so glad I did it because I've always been curious. I'm hearing more and more people are turning to this. Again, I think it has its benefits. I will say this is where I think people get stuck. Where I'm having people come to me is that they get something in their mind, they understand the perspective of like, oh, okay, I'm not sharing something because I'm afraid I'll feel rejected. All right, that feels kind of true. I get that I can be both compassionate and speak my truth. I get that I get to protect my son. Great. They get it in the mind, and the heart is still not resolved. And that is a blessing because this is saying to you, you are ready for getting to the core of the remembrance of who you are. And so when people say, I've done the inner work, I've done the inner work, I've done the inner work, I get it. There's just different types of inner work. And a few weeks ago, I was in my garden harvesting carrots, and it reminded me of this notion of doing the inner work because ultimately I want to get to the point where I can like eat my carrot and it's edible, right? So the first part of the work that I have to do that, I have to like shake off the dirt that's in the garden. I got to shake it off, right? And so there's one layer of getting rid of the dirt. Then the next step that I need to do is go to a faucet, get some water, start pouring water on it to start rubbing the dirt off of the carrots, right? Now, if you're like me, you've got some carrots where, man, that dirt is like stuck in. There's some grooves where the dirt is just wedged in. And the only way to get it out is you got to get a peeler and you've got to peel off that layer to get to the core of that carrot. And that's what reminded me of this work that we're doing with the sacred self is we're getting the peeler out of those places where the dirt is wedged in. And it's just a different tool than the water and the faucet. So it's not that water and faucet is there's anything wrong with it. You need that tool. It washes things away. It's important. You learn how to scrub, but man, sometimes it takes a peeler to get to some of those core aspects. And that's what we're talking about doing. So what I love about this work with the sacred self is that we get to the core and then we continue to practice living this way in our human challenges from greater love, knowing at the core the love that we are. Despite all the ways that our ego wants to take us, that our mind wants to take us, that the ego still shows up, that it's all part of the experience of bringing in greater love into every cell, every fiber of our being. So when we live from this way, life is truly more easeful, more at peace. And so it's less about getting in those meditative states to find peace, even though we still want to do that because the silence is so important. but we're not reliant on that for peace. We are bringing in our emotions as they are intended to from the divine feminine to guide us back, to get the peeler out and really get clear about the core of who you are. And that's what awaits us if we allow ourselves to work with our emotions as they were intended to. So I hope this supports you, and I hope that you always know there is nothing to fix, just to remember. So this is a bit of a PS of what happened afterwards for my son and his friend. And I thought I should add this because some of you might feel like, okay, this is great. We process the emotion. How did things turn out? Well, first of all, when we stand in our truth, we do so trying to align with the highest good for all. And yet we don't know how people are going to react. We're going to respond. Fortunately, my son was connecting to a different friend that's also going to Sydney, and they decided to sit the friend down where trouble seems to follow him and have a heart to heart. And I think the message that us moms wanted to get across is that we know everyone in their friend group are, good-hearted people. It's just that it would never be intentional that someone would get dragged down because of someone else's behavior. But when you have a pattern of not taking responsibility for your actions, that's what tends to happen. And again, it's not intentional. So the last I heard is his friend was kind of sad, while also healing. So I think that's good. I think it's good that it seems like he's taking it a bit more seriously. And so, yeah, I just wanted to leave you with that in case you were curious. But again, we want to step in, aligning from our highest selves as best that we can, imperfectly, as we walk our human path, and voicing from love what comes through us, and knowing it may not always land for people, but that together hopefully can have the necessary conversations and work things through based on meeting people with where they're at. And so, yeah, I wanted to share that piece with you. All right, take care.
I am so honored you have joined me today. If you enjoyed the I'm Perfectly Divine podcast, subscribe so you don't miss any of our power-filled episodes. Also, if you know another who is strong, sensitive, and spiritual and wants to dive deeper into emotions and ancient wisdom so they too can create profound peace and fulfillment from within, please share this podcast. Thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to reconnecting with you soon.